Good evening all and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Eastleigh Local Area Committee. Councillors are reminded that to take part in this meeting you must have an open mind so that you can take all the relevant considerations presented to the meeting into account in reaching your decision. By attending today you have decided that you will listen to all points of view expressed by speakers and public and are able to participate and cannot be seen to have predetermined the applications. This meeting will be video recorded and will be uploaded to the Council's website. If any members of the public prefer not to be recorded, then please do contact a member of staff. If you are planning on filming or recording the meeting, then please do let us know so that we can ensure that you are not filming members of the public that do not wish to be filmed. The Chair reserves the right to ask any filming considered intrusive to be stopped. More information is available on the Council's website. We always welcome people to speak at the meeting. Although this is a formal committee meeting of Eastleigh Borough Council and not a public meeting, the members of the public that have registered to speak will be invited to speak at the relevant agenda item and will be given a total of 3 minutes to speak. When the light is amber, they only have 30 seconds remaining. People wishing to speak on an item on the agenda are able to do so before the debate starts. Once the debate has started, however, it's not possible to invite or receive comments from the floor. We want to be as inclusive as possible, but will not tolerate any disruptions to our meeting. Should there be any disruption, we do have the power under the Council's constitution to remove people from the meeting or continue in private, neither of which we take lightly or wish to do so. Good evening, everybody. So we start with the first item on the agenda is apologies.
We have apologies from Councillor Mann.
Thank you. And the next item is declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations of interest they'd wish to make? If so, please indicate now, and when called, please state the nature and reason for the interest. You can, of course, declare any interests as they occur to you in the meeting. No? Excellent. We now move on to the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of November 2022. I'd like to get these approved as a true record. Could I please have a proposer? Councillor Bicknell, and a seconder, Cllr Irish. Any debate on the minutes? Any issues with the minutes? No. All agreed, please raise your hand. Thank you very much, councillors. Now on to public participation. Did anyone register for public participation? No, we did have we have an email from we have an email from Cllr Tidridge regarding the car parking at the hub. So what we will do is we will reply to her shortly via email with answers to her question. Yeah. No problem.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll just read this out. Please can the committee inform me when the work is scheduled to be completed for the new car park spaces on the land previously occupied by the public toilets at the hub. Please confirm if reinstating a paved link to the main road to the west of where the block is planned. The toilet block was demolished some months ago now, but the land is still cordoned off and unused. There are several problems with this. One, the pedestrian access to the hub from the bus stop and pavement used to be possible using the paved path to the west of the toilet block. Since demolition, pedestrians are left with an increasingly muddy gap at the hedge. Reinstating the path would have been useful recently to enable pedestrians to stay dry when the car park was flooded. The car park is frequently overused, especially when the events take place. Having more spaces available might help to address this issue and reduce the risk of damaging fly parking. Number 3, the site remains an eyesore. I remain disappointed that users of the hub are still not provided with acceptable toilet provision. Just 2 toilets, individual toilets, are available to users. Members of the public can only access these toilets when the centre is open, and it is a real shame that these public conveniences, a key public service, were cut. For residents of Bishopstoke and Fair Oak who have chosen to walk to Eastleigh, and for users of the Itchin Way, these toilets were a useful provision.
Thank you, Guy. Now move on to the Chair's report. So I'm pleased to say that the climbing frame is now fully open following a redesign and manufacture of the netting. We hope this will reduce the risk of vandalism in future. We're now working with the play equipment provider to agree a redesigned solution for the swings and hope to have an update very soon. With regards to Free Space Skate Park, we've recently concluded the tender process for the design and build of Free Space Skate Park following the vandalism 2 years ago. I'm pleased to say we've now received a £67,500 award from Veola Environmental Trust to add to the original £150,000 project budget. We will shortly be consulting our user groups on the emerging designs, more details to follow soon. I'm also pleased to say that despite the current financial pressures, we've been able to secure the funding for our regular events during the summer, which are free to all and provide such important opportunities to come together in the face of cost of living, in particular, Eastleigh Unwrapped on the 10th of June and the Mellor on the 23rd of July. And councillors will be aware that we've received notification from Churchill's about a proposed development of Romsey Close and Tornby Road retirement home, along with consultation sent to local residents. We've received invitations for an online consultation about an 84-bed retirement home, and so we'll add the link into the minutes so that anyone who's interested can fill out that consultation and feedback. We now move on to the next items.
Can I just clarify, when you started your report, you mentioned about a climbing frame. Is that Cllr Park?
Yes.
You didn't actually say that.
Oh, sorry.
No, but I rather guessed it was, but I wanted to make sure it was Cllr Park.
Of course, yes.
I've had lots of complaints about
Sorry,
it.
Cllr Irish, yeah.
That's quite all right, Chair, thank you. All right.
So we're moving on to planning now, and so before that we would like to invite Gary to give his presentation on the planning guidelines to help us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick reminder to all members when considering this evening's planning applications. So proposals must be considered on planning grounds and you must determine them in accordance with the development plan unless there are material considerations which indicate otherwise. The development plan is the Eastleigh Borough Local Plan 2016-36, which was adopted April last year. Also, although not relevant to this evening, is the Hampshire Minerals and Waste Plan. Also relevant is National Planning Policy Framework, document set up by the government provides guidance as to how local authorities should look to produce plans, policies and implement those policies. Also of relevance are any relevant supplementary planning documents such as quality places, parking standards and so on that the council has. Other material considerations are planning history or previous applications related to the site or decisions, similar decisions, any appeal decisions or any site-specific matters, highway matters, trees, etc. Any consultee and third-party comments or any relevant precedent or case law. When making your decisions, you don't have to go with a recommendation. You can choose to make another decision, but we have to make sure that that is explained and minuted with clear reasons given, whether that be approval or refusal. You can also look to defer an application to ask for additional information or clarification on points. And also you have the option to apply additional controls or conditions if reasonable in planning terms, should you wish. Right, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Gary. So would you now like to present the report on the first one, 1 Romsey Close?
Certainly, thank you, Chair. It's first application this evening, Romsey Close, not too far away, really, over there, probably is literally a stone's throw. For the erection of a 2- and 3-storey block of 7 2-bedroom flats with associated parking, landscaping, detached bin and cycle stores following demolition of the existing property. So, Romsey Close, it's a private cul-de-sac just off Romsey Road. So this is, let me get my pen up. So we've got Romsey Road, we're about here at the minute, I think, so pretty much. So we've got Romsey Road, main Romsey road there, access to Romsey Close, Charlotte Court, the remainder of the close here, and this is Toynbee Road, and this is the former police station care home. The close, it says Coldstack, contains 5 former police houses dating from around the 1950s, and it sits on the sort of the outskirts of the town centre within an area defined as the Renaissance Quarter. Here's a few photos of the site. So this is, top one here is not showing up brilliantly in the lighting, but this is from the access into Romsey Close, looking up the close, and number 1 is the first property in as you approach. Photo in the middle here shows the distance between the neighbouring care home building, which is, whilst it was still being constructed, all that scaffold is now out. And here this photo shows the sort of size differences between the two. This photo here is from Toynbee Road, the block of flats built to the rear, which I believe is called Canada Court. Looking down their access drive, and number 1 is there at the end. And just to get a bit of an idea of the lay of the land, this is something from Google. I've highlighted the site there. And as you can see, that we've got Charlotte Court, which is a 3- and 4-storey block of retirement apartments, and we've got the police station, which is up to 4 stories, 3-storey Canada Court behind. But to the north of the site is all much smaller scale 2-storey residential development. In terms of what's proposed, so we have Romsey Close coming in, parking to the frontage, building sits approximately centrally, and then with a shared amenity space to the rear, with a detached bin store to the front and cycle store to the rear. So there's a total of 7 2-bedroom units, so 3 on the ground floor, 3 on the first floor, and then a further on the 3rd floor. All accessed via central spine corridor with a lift. All are dual aspect, either main aspects either east or west, so you should get good levels of sunlight and good reasonable levels of outlook. And then say the top floor has the 7th unit. It also benefits from a roof terrace up at level, and all the other units also have balconies or an outside terrace for the ground floor units as well. All exceed our minimum standards, and yeah, should be generally good quality flats. In terms of elevations, so it's this is from the close, so this is the frontage, and this is the rear elevation, and these are the flanks. So 2- and 3-storey block. 2-storey here dropping down, which I'll show you in the next slide, to address the lower scale of dwellings in the remainder of Romsey Close. So it's brick-faced building, pitch-tiled roof, quite a simple construction, some brick detailing there to provide a little bit more interest, but it sort of follows some of the characters and materials that have been used in the adjoining existing development and the more recent development. And here's just a street scene to show the existing sort of relationship between the scale of the old police station site and the care home there, and numbers 2 and 3 Romsey Close. And as you can see, the proposal provides a good transition, a gentle dropping down in scale and also width and so on. So it should hopefully assist, give a better relationship than at present. And also for completeness, bins and the cycle stores, they are what they are. In terms of updates from the report, condition 1, we need to add an additional drawing for the cycle store to be added in there, and that sets out all the drawing numbers. Landscape design comments, I still haven't received formal comments on the most updated version. There's been a number of iterations, as you'll see within the report, although informally I've spoken to them and they have no objections with the scheme, are quite happy with it. Natural England have unsurprisingly raised an objection on the grounds of impact on the New Forest National Park, but that's something they do to all residential development at the moment, and it's an issue that we as an authority can not overrule them, but as the determining authority we have our own scheme which, provided the applicants enter into it, will address those concerns and those reasons that have been raised. So looking then at the key points and policy and principle within the urban edge, where the basic principle of development is acceptable. As I said at the beginning, we're within the Eastleigh Town Renaissance Quarter, or set out by policy E4 of the adopted local plan. Also of relevance is policy DM1, which is a sort of general cover-all policy looking at amenity character, site context, design, landscaping, impact on neighbouring properties and uses, etc. There's also the MPPF, obviously government guidance, and in principle, so the proposed redevelopment is acceptable. It's all dependent on the detail. So in terms of the Renaissance Quarter, policy E4, that sets out a number of uses that are deemed acceptable within the Renaissance Quarter, and that essentially the Renaissance Quarter covers all the periphery of Lee Road Park, along Lee Road a little bit further west, and partly up Twyford Road as well. And it encourages sort of well-designed, people-intensive development, predominantly residential, but also commercial, office, and other uses appropriate for the locality on the sort of periphery of the town centre. And it looks to predominantly 3 stories development would be permitted, obviously, but there are, any scheme needs to still meet the requirements of other policies relevant in the plan. As I mentioned as well, there's sort of this issue, the area, the character of the area, and it's a transitional area between the sort of larger scale of the town centre development and the activities there, and the much more domestic 2-storey scale of all development to the north. So this area and this top edge of Romsey Road is an important transitional area. In terms of other considerations, I say there's been a number of iterations of the design, but we've got there, and I think we've got a good quality scheme now. It's efficient without being an overdevelopment of the site. In terms of the street scene, the area of character, say, provides that appropriate transition between the differing scales. In terms of parking and access, it doesn't meet our minimum standards, but given we're so close to the town centre, it's a sustainable site, so a reduced parking standard is deemed acceptable, and there's 1 space per unit, which would all be 1 space allocated per unit. So that's deemed to be reasonable, given the proximity to the town centre. In terms of amenity, no unacceptable impact on neighbours. There will be an impact, of course, but not to any unacceptable extent, and it should give a good quality environment for future occupiers. In terms of noise and air quality, because we're fairly close to Romsey Road, no objections been raised by environmental health on those grounds. We're just far enough away that we fall outside of those air quality issues, and equally in terms of the noise issues, that should be just far enough away not to cause any significant issues, and it shouldn't require any additional measures over and above that required by building regulations in terms of noise insulation and so on. In terms of ecology, there's options for enhancements. There's bats and bird boxes and bricks proposed, as well as suitable landscaping for pollinators and so on within the site. And in terms of sustainability, there's you saw on the drawings, there's photovoltaic panels on the roofs, and there's also other possible options. And plus, again, we're in a sustainable location close to the town centre. So to conclude, it's a very sustainable site. It's deemed appropriate for the Renaissance Quarter. So the design and amenity issues that originally were raised have all been addressed, and so we'll provide a good quality environment for future occupiers, and in all other matters it's deemed to meet policy and guidance requirements. So the recommendation is to approve the scheme subject to securing contributions towards the Council's new forest mitigation strategy, which I mentioned earlier. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Gary, very much. So we now go on to public participation on this issue. I've got the names. Sorry. So I'd like to invite Mr. Matthew Johnson to speak to the committee on behalf of Hambley Care Homes.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm here tonight on behalf of Hambley Care Homes, the owner and operator of the adjacent nursing home at Alston Manor, which I'm pleased to say is almost complete and looking forward to welcoming its first residents. The well-being of Hambley's residents is of utmost importance to it, and these are, of course, some of the most vulnerable members in society. And Hambley has no objection to the principle of building near a town centre. It's sensible planning, but had concerns about the details and the impacts of this scheme. A significant amount of time was spent by the council and Hambley during the application for the care home to ensure the relationship between the care home and One Romsey Close was acceptable, and this included increasing the the separation distances between the buildings, removing all windows from the northern elevation of the care home, with the exception of obscure glazed end of corridor windows. And the council concluded in that officer report that would ensure there would be no adverse or unacceptable loss of privacy, light or outlook. The proposal at 1 Romsey Close now seeks to undo this significant and considered work. It's significantly closer to the care home. It introduces 10 new windows on the southern elevation, directly overlooking the care home and its garden. And the officer report notes that this is acceptable on the basis that these are secondary windows, serving kitchens, bathrooms and secondary bedrooms, meaning that overlooking would be minimised by virtue of time spent in these rooms. But time spent cannot be enforced. I actually spend quite a bit of time in my kitchen. I quite like cooking. And the windows are not even proposed as obscure glazed, and that's something that could be secured by condition. And actually, I think proposed condition 16 refers to windows on the northern elevation, but for some reason not on the southern elevation. Care home residents are particularly sensitive to overlooking, and the scheme would mean that a large part of the care home garden is no longer private. The officer report doesn't consider the impact of overlooking from the balconies either. I think, to summarise, it would be incredibly disappointing if the council followed the opening of this home with permission for a scheme that immediately eroded the quality of life. There are some quick remedies to this. And this scheme has been through numerous iterations, so we really would urge the council to request further amendments before this scheme moves any further. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to invite Mrs. Harrison to speak. Thank you.
Hi. So much of what I was going to say has already been covered. I hope you've read our statement in support of the planning application submitted in February 2022. Points 9 to 12 dealt with the impact that has already been imposed on number 1 with the development next door, Canada House to the west, Charlotte Lodge to the east, Fair Home and Fair Place going on beyond that. So we sought to show that there's already been a dramatic change to the area in terms of character and nature of the area, the street scene, the residential amenity value of the properties in Toynbee and Romsey Close, the visual intrusion from Hambley's development, the light deprivation, the loss of privacy, and actually the light that now beams into Romsey Close on a daily or nightly basis. Points 13 and 14 concern the impact on the property owners in Romsey Close and Toynbee, but we understand that councillors are aware of this development proposal coming in from Churchill's, which would mean that within the Renaissance Quarter, where we accept that the planning is for large-scale, high-density developments, actually means that we would be now surrounded on 4 sides by 3- and 4-storey developments. It's obviously the willingness of our neighbours in Toynbee and Romsey Close to accept the proposal from Churchill's, an option to buy their properties, is as a result of the existing development that has happened around us. So following a lengthy pre-application and consultation stage, the proposal has been amended to 7 flats in 3-storey blocks as recommended by the planning officer. Then we had further iterations and have spent another 18 months in discussion with the planning department before settling on this 3- and 2-storey development, which they're now willing to support, that minimises the impact on Romsey Close and particularly our neighbours at number 2. This isn't an overdevelopment. The proposal is very modest compared with all of the other developments that have happened around us. We have looked to optimise the use of the land with quality places in 7 rather than 9 apartments, so that they're more generous, flexible, friendly to the new occupants, with well-designed internal and external living space and lift access to the different floors. In terms of parking, we really support the idea of sustainable transport solutions. I cycle, commute to work by train, public transport. We have trains, buses, coach links, even an airport. So we encourage the council in this sort of idea of reduced parking. Cars aren't needed in Romsey Close. You can walk anywhere.
Thank you very much. Mr Harrison.
I would like to address the issue of the care home and overlooking it. In fact, if you look at the diagrams you have up there, the plans, you'll see that the north elevation, the bit that sticks out, the bottom bit there, that's a kitchen and a laundry. There's obscured glass there. There's no way that anybody can see out. Any residents that have balconies higher up, in fact, their vision is east and west. It isn't to the north. Also, if they were to come out into the garden areas, they're not going to look to the north because they're going to come out from the east and the west. The only entrance is into the kitchen on the north side, and that's for deliveries into the dry goods area. So the impact on the residents is going to be extremely limited. In fact, since the original site layout of the care home was made, one tree has been taken out and replaced by a substation, which is in the amenity area to the east. So the impact of this building is going to be very limited. Moving on from that, sustainability has been a key feature of this. We were very keen. In fact, originally we wanted to have a green roof over the whole building, but that wasn't possible because you couldn't have a green roof and solar panels at the same time. So we opted to go for the solar panels. We've put green roofs on the cycle and the bin store. So we've got green roofs there. We've also put in a substantial number of environmental features, hedges around. In fact, I suggested to Hamberley that they put in hedges rather than the fencing that's there. And we've managed that with this design. We've got the hedges there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'll now open it up to councillors for questions. Cllr Irish.
It's more of a comment, really, Chairman. So would you rather we left it till later?
Questions
Okay,
now,
fine,
so we'll
fine.
leave that till debate. Councillor Tyson-Payne.
Just a quick question, Gary. What's the other side of numbers 3 and 4? Not to the left, as I look at it. Don't give me north, south, east and west. Don't know which is which. What's over there?
So this is number 1.
Yeah, number
2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh, there's 4 and 5. Okay.
Yeah, 4 and 5. So there's 5 properties altogether in Romsey Close, and then you have properties in Toynbee Road. Sorry, don't know the numbers of those ones.
Okay. And the other side, number 5, what's that over
And the other side, number 5, I think is it Toynbee Close? It's the bottom of Toynbee Close. So these are garage blocks that serve Toynbee Close, which are 1960s semis that front Toynbee Road and also Toynbee Close.
Cool.
And then
you.
this is Archers Road, just in here.
Yeah, thanks. That's lovely. Thank you.
Councillor Bicknell.
I could almost whisper this in Gary's ear, actually. Can I have I'd just like to, if you can go back to the north elevation, please.
Elevation.
Yep, that's it. And the north elevation, the one on the right, that's the one that backs onto the amenity space for the Hamberley development.
No, that faces number 2.
Right, I'm with you.
This southern elevation is what is onto Hamberley. So these are secondary secondary bedrooms, bathrooms, kitchens.
Right, but glazed on the ground floor.
Yes. Well, there's no conditions requiring those windows on the southern elevation to be obscure glazed. Something you may wish to consider as members. The reason I didn't apply it to the southern elevation as opposed to when I did on the north is because the garden of the care home is a communal space. It's not an individual private garden as such. And I say it's the north side of the main garden to the care home, so it's unlikely to be used very much. It's going to be dark space, not really used. There's main spaces to the south and we get orientation right, eastern side. And plus, putting obscure glazing on a bedroom is never ideal by any means. You could certainly look to do it on bathrooms and kitchens possibly, but I would be reluctant to do it on bedrooms just because of the quality of environment it creates. It's not ideal by any means, but I think in this instance it's sort of to be expected within a fairly dense urban scenario which we have here.
So Romsey Close is a private road. So I'm just wanting to know about what happens with on-street parking in a private road situation.
That would be up to the residents or whoever's in control of the road and whether they wish to employ private parking wardens or private parking company to manage it. But it wouldn't be within Eastleigh's jurisdiction or soon to be Hampshire's jurisdiction. I think there's yellow lines down, but whether they can actually realistically be enforced, only the very bell mouth of Romsey Close is actually adopted highway. Once you get past the bell mouth, it's private from there on. I'm not sure how the arrangement, Mr. and Mrs. Harrison can probably tell us whether it's shared amongst the residents of the 5 properties there or whether it's still Hampshire Constabulary, because they're ex-police houses, still a constabulary, so they've forgotten that it's probably theirs. So yes, that it doesn't prevent potential overflow parking from happening in Romsey Close, but say there's a reasonable level that's been required, I think, on the scheme at 1 space per unit, and it's going to be obvious to any future occupiers.
Any more questions? No. Councillor Bicknell.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to question condition 15. There you go.
Yep.
That condition 15 would be the condition that would, in effect, nullify the objection from Natural England, although I am well aware that Natural England do object to everything based on the nutrient issue, because actually Natural England, along with the government, don't actually know how to deal with it, and so they're leaving it up to local councils. But number 15, condition 15, would be the condition where the council would put in the mitigation for the nutrients.
Yes, that would address one of Natural England's usual objections in terms of nitrates and phosphates and water quality within the Solent. We can apply that condition as a prior to occupation condition. If you choose to approve the scheme this evening, the applicants can enter into the council's own mitigation scheme, which sell credits to address that issue. The other issue that was raised, although Natural England haven't actually objected on that ground, they're happy with our scheme in that regard. The New Forest issue is related to recreational pressure upon the New Forest. But we, again, have our own scheme to deal with that. It's not supported by Natural England at the moment, but as the determining authority and the responsible authority, we deem it is adequate to address the issues. And again, provided that money is, although that is an upfront payment rather than a prior to occupation.
Thank you, Gary. Yes, you're right about the New Forest scheme. The council has got a policy, and basically the New Forest are well happy with it because actually basically they get paid, and they can use their money in the New Forest to do things in the New Forest. So the New Forest Authority is quite happy with the scheme because us, along with a number of other councils, give them money for everything that we build, and then they spend it accordingly in the New Forest. Some information for members that might not be aware of how that scheme works, but that's basically it.
Okay, do I have a proposer, please? Councillor Bicknell, and a seconder. Cllr Tyson-Payne. Thank you. Now on to debate. Cllr Irish.
Yes, Chair. Yes, yesterday I had the pleasure of going to the opening of Alston House, and I was very, very impressed with it. And I was very impressed with the garden. I thought the garden was lovely. It's nice and secluded. It's got a brick wall round to keep the residents there. And, you know, the residents that are going to live there are going to really enjoy that garden. And it does concern me now that there is a possible potential here for overlooking, and that's one of my concerns. I've got very mixed views about this application. I'm not really for or against it at the moment, but I was a bit surprised to hear something about the garden, because I do think the garden's a good feature of Alston House, and it's got lots of good features, but that's one of the good features, and I'm a bit concerned about them being overlooked there. I've also had residents from Charlotte Lodge contacting me about concerns about the height of the building there as well. So, yeah, I am a little bit concerned, but I can't make my mind up at the moment. I'm going to go, Chair.
Councillor Tyson-Payne.
So I always thought when the care home was built, this was the next thing that would happen. I think it was a logical extension, and in time I wouldn't be surprised if it happened at number 2, 3, 4 and 5. I can't find a reason not to. Having accepted that the care home could go in, it feels disingenuous to not support this. So I actually am supportive of this, but I do feel for numbers 2, 3, 4 and 5.
Any more debate? Councillor Bicknell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Overall, I think it's a good development. If you look at it policy-wise, it ticks all the boxes. It was a site in the local plan, it's part of the Relations Quarter, and it meets EBC policies with the exception of parking. Although on this particular application, parking is slightly irrelevant because you can't actually get much closer to the town other than picture tent on Lee Road Rec. And that, so from the sustainability side, it's as good as you're going to get. And it fits in with all the other buildings that are there. Charlotte Lodge, Bandstand Court, Fairholme Lodge, were all buildings of similar periods that were dismantled, as Councillr Irish knows, because he sat on the planning committee for most of them, if not all of them, and built, those particular homes. Alston House, looking at, Romsey Close, I agree with Councillor Tyson-Payne that if you're actually a planner and you tend to look at things in the wider picture, you could potentially see what was on the cards. And obviously, with Romsey Close coming up, then the rest of them, it goes without saying. So I do agree with Councillor Tyson-Payne that it'd be disingenuous to not to accept that, especially given it's in the local plan. Where it comes to overlooking the garden, planning is a balance and a juggling act, and I think that actually the overlooking of the garden will be minimal. It's a north-facing garden anyway, so it's not going to be causing any issues of any light. And open spaces, as well as being private, can be communal, and that you're talking about potentially, building communities, so interaction between communities is a good thing. I do find it quite hypocritical or quite interesting that residents of Charlotte Lodge are complaining about overlooking, given the fact that when that planning application came in, people were complaining that building would be overlooking them, and the same with Bandstand Court, and that it's you can't have, well, it's okay for me but not okay for you, when you're looking for to actually provide provide housing in a very sustainable location for people that are not as young as they used to be. At the end of the day. So overall, I think it's a good development. There's obviously been a lot of work that's been done here to actually make it fit, and I commend the work that's been done to actually make it fit in with its surroundings and to minimise the impact, and that's the key. This planning application. it's minimising impact. Any planning application does have an impact, and this one minimises it. So, yeah, I'm quite happy to actually support it. The only caveat I would add, it'd be quite nice if all developers would take the same sort of care and working with planning authorities to come up with a development that is pretty much as good as you're ever really going to get in the realistic world of dealing with planning applications. I can see no sensible reason for any objection at all, and certainly none that would actually stand up in any planning legislation whatsoever. So yeah, happy to throw my weight behind this, and yeah, thank you very much, Chair.
Cllr Irish.
Yes, Chair. It says here, Eastleigh Town Council comments awaited. Have we had comments from Eastleigh Town Council yet on this?
No, not on this one, although to give them their due, this application was submitted before the Town Council was formed. So, yeah, no comments from them, no.
Any more debate, councillors? No? Okay, I'd like to move to the vote then. So all those in favour? All those against? An abstention. Okey-doke. Thank you, councillors. So that was passed. You're more than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, or you're more than welcome to leave. But thank you for coming. It's really important that people do come along to meetings, and it's great to see you. Thank you very much. And now it's back to Gary to talk about the Regal buildings.
All right, thank you, Chair. Our second application this evening, interesting scheme, proposed conversion of the former, well, last known as Martins. There's been a few different names since then, or prior to that even. So it's conversion of the former nightclub to form 2 commercial units at ground floor, 11 number 1 bed, 5 number 2 bed, and 2 number 3 bedroom residential flats. That's 18 in total, with associated external works. So the Regal buildings, we're, again, not very far away. Lee Road, pedestrianised area, Lee Road, Sainsbury's just here. There's the Wagon Works pub there. Got the banks and so on here. Mitchell Road's multi-storey car park, Mitchell House, which was relatively recently converted into flats. And then you've got Market Street through here, which is the sort of main retail street, if you like, within the town centre. So we're sort of slap bang in the middle of the town centre. Also of note is Regal Walk, which runs along the southern side of the site, and that's a fairly well-used pedestrian route from the multi-storey car park through into the town centre. So the building, I think we'll all admit, has seen better days. So it was originally was it 1911, I think, looking back at the history of it, and it was the Variety Theatre. Later then converted to the Regal Cinema in the 1930s, I think, and then closed in the 80s or late 70s. Then there was a later addition added. So the old original building is this sort of light red brick, and the later addition is this lovely sort of brown thing, very 80s, added onto the Mitchell Road frontage. Say it's seen better days. And this sort of gives a better indication as to sort of what's around it, and shows the 2 parts of the building. So the original part of the building, the old Regal, was sort of the rear 2/3 of the site, effectively, and the front third is that later 1980s edition. I think there was originally a reception area and foyer and so on, but I don't think any of that's really left now, unfortunately. Apparently it was quite grand. I've seen some photos. You've got Mitchell Road car park behind, say Mitchell House, and the railway station and so on. So it's quite a large-scale building, quite a large site within the town centre. So important in terms of sort of promotion of redevelopment. So in terms of physical change to the footprint of the building, that's remaining exactly as is. It's all internal works and works to the exterior. So in terms of the ground floor, so there's 4 residential units. So this is Market Street and this is Regal Walk. So there's 2 units fronting directly onto Regal Walk, 2 units onto Market Street, and they all share an ancillary bin store, service yard or service corridor, if you like, accessed to the rear of Mitchell Road. Entrance to the upper floor flats is from Market Street into a foyer area here and up the stairs, and there's cycle store and bin store for the residential element, again, access to the north and to the side. There's access all around, so there's also an alleyway along the northern side of the building, so you can access the building from all 4 sides. The upper floors then are split into the flats, and so they're 1, 2 and 3 bed units. All flats either face east, south or west. Some are dual aspect, all have a private balcony exterior space, and they're all a majority inset balconies, so not sort of tacked onto the building, so they're inset, so they're protected, and actually quite nice space, much better than external balconies. Then in terms of the upper floor, makes use of the roof space, so the only external addition in terms of volume is the number of dormer windows that are being added to the roof on the southern roof slope, and they'll provide light to the top floor flats, as well as a small exterior sort of terrace space built into the roof area. Elevationally, quite different. I say the scale, the overall height and envelope of the building, it remains unchanged in terms of its size and position. There's no walls being moved around or anything like that, but there's significant change in terms of the look of the building. So there's quite a number of holes being punctured into the external elevations of the building to provide windows and those inset balconies and so on. So quite a bit of work. There was initial concern from myself that could the building, being as old as it is and how it's not really been looked after for the past 20 plus years, could it take this amount of punishment, essentially? So I asked for a structural survey to be undertaken, which it was, and it turns out, actually, it's a solid old thing. Because it was built to be a theatre, one big open span space, the walls are actually pretty substantial. And they're still in decent condition, and provided there's no significant structural alterations to the roof, no major trusses and stuff like that are taken out, the structural engineer was satisfied that the building can take it. Still quite a bit of work, but the building can take it, so hopefully, if it goes ahead, we won't end up with it collapsing in a heap of rubble. I added this in just to show sort of how the insertion of the floors within the space. The front part of the building onto what's the road gone? Oh, it's gone out. Market Street. There we go. I knew it was an M. Market Street. Predominantly it stays as is, but that's because it's that later 80s edition. But the rear part of the building, which was the big auditorium, so it will have the floors added in. Quick artist impression, there's a few illustrations here. This sort of gives an idea of the concept which was being looked at. So the building, to try and tie the sort of 2 halves together and get rid of that ugly brown brick, the suggestion is that the building would be painted. So the lower portion, the retail units and so on, would be painted the dark grey or black, with the residential elements on the upper floors in a very light grey or off-white sort of colour. So that differentiates the 2 uses, and it should certainly brighten up the street scene and provide a lot of interest and activity and so on. So there's some 3D renders provided. So this is the view that's sort of looking up Market Street, and that's the entrance just into Regal Walk there, sort of as is and as could be. It was suggested that these sort of, I don't know whether they were windows or not, but they could be used as sort of almost art installations on the building to reflect some of the history of the building, almost sort of cinema signs or something like that. So there's options to provide a bit of interest there in that regard. Then looking down Regal Walk, at the moment, not particularly pleasant approach. I know there's a few years ago there was some work done to the paving to provide some artwork there related to the cinema, but it's still not a very pleasant space to use necessarily. So having all the windows good natural overlooking and natural surveillance, and plus those units that open onto it, could actually really bring a bit of life and interest to the site. And we'll look at how it can be lit and so on to make sure it's safe in the evenings and stuff. So that's all there are, but there's a condition requiring those sort of details there. This is then Market Street again, but looking south to show how it would be viewed then. And then from the rear, from Mitchell Road, so you've got the big mass of the old building, and this is how it certainly could look with the interest and so on, with the balconies and so on added in on the corner there. So this will provide interest looking up Mitchell Road, and a bit of life and a bit of interest there, as well as along Regal Walk. So in terms of updates, Natural England, surprise, surprise, rejected on the grounds of impact on the New Forest, but we don't need to go over that one again. So that's the only update to the report since it was published. So looking then at the key principles, we're within the urban edge, principles acceptable, we're in the town centre, in the primary zone of the town centre, where policies E3 and DM22 are the most relevant. E3 looks at redevelopment within the town centre and what's deemed acceptable. DM22 talks about changes of use within shopping parades and so on. And DM1 again, which is that general coverall policy. The MPPF, there's sort of emphasised the importance of a range of uses within town centres to add to the vitality and viability of town centres. And so, again, in principle, converting the building from its former use, or no use at the moment, to what's being proposed is acceptable in principle. So as I said, in terms of the two main policies there, E3 it supports regeneration in the town centre, and there's certainly a site that needs regeneration. It has been something of an eyesore for many a year, and certainly lets the town centre, sort of that quarter of the town centre, if you like, down as a whole, and it seems to be getting worse in recent years. So the policy supports that. In terms of DM22, it does allow changes of use to residential, but only on upper floors, which this proposal does. We retain a retail use on the ground floor. So in terms of area character, as you mentioned, it will bring a long disused building back into an appropriate use. Certainly be a visual enhancement for the immediate area in the town centre, and would hopefully enhance the vitality of the town centre, not only bringing more commercial units in, but also more residents living in the heart of the town centre. In terms of other issues then, so in terms of layout and design, actually makes really good use of a difficult building. It's not an easy building to convert from a big open space to one of lots of small spaces that is required in terms of residential use. So it's actually, and it's got multiple different levels and so on from the two different halves and so on. So the architect's actually done a really good job of trying to make it all work without having to resort to massive physical alterations to the building. In terms of the street scene and the area character, as I said, it should be certainly an enhancement, and certainly to Regal Walk, that link across that part of the town centre will be a great enhancement. In terms of access, parking, highway issues, it is a zero parking scheme. There isn't really any scope at all to provide any parking on this site, but as we have in the past, it's in the heart of the town centre, the most sustainable area within the borough. We're a 30-second walk from the bus station, about a minute walk from the train station. You've got a number of supermarkets. You've got all the facilities you want on your doorstep. So there should not really be a need a car, but there is a good cycle store, and there's a condition requiring that to be provided, as well as charging points within that cycle store as well for people with e-bikes. Just means they can travel a little bit further. In terms of amenity, there shouldn't be any unacceptable impact on neighbours. There were some concerns from new residents within Mitchell House, but again, it's the distances and so on are actually quite considerable given how tight everything is, and so there shouldn't be any unacceptable impact in that regard. A lot of the concerns were related to deliveries and so on of the businesses on the ground floor, but then again, the existing shop unit could be opened up again without requiring any consent anyway. So there shouldn't be any difficulties there in that regard. Plus, these are smaller units and not going to require large vehicles regularly delivering. In terms of amenity, yes, we're in a town centre, so there was possible issues about businesses impacting the immunity of residents and residents complaining about businesses and so on. But actually, it's this part of the town centre, unlike Hans Way, which we were looking at in the last committee, is quite a different character to this quarter of the town centre. Most businesses are generally daytime uses, retail type uses, so there's not so much going on in the evenings, so there shouldn't be the same level of disturbance there. And equally, as we said in the structural survey, the building's got big thick walls and there's a big thick floor between the ground floor and the up above, so there shouldn't be, even the uses on the ground floor shouldn't have any significant impact on those above. So in terms of town centre living, there's no real objections or concerns in that regard. In terms of the other things, drainage, no issues there. Ecology, there's scope for some enhancements, bird boxes, bat boxes. There's not really bats around, but there are birds nesting on the roof. So there's some scope for a little bit of enhancement there, and we can maybe encourage people to put some plants and stuff on their balconies and so on. And in terms of sustainability, as I said, there's scope for various solutions, PV on the roof, etc. But I think the most sustainable element of the scheme is the fact we're reusing a substantial old building. And that's something that should be applauded and supported. As a major scheme, being for over 10 units, we can actually get some planning obligations, and these are the obligations that are being sought. Community infrastructure, public open space, and play provision and public art. Policy 5 requires any development within the town centre to provide monies towards enhancement of the town centre as a whole. However, that's really related around retail commercial uses as opposed to residential. But as you'll see from the report, the actual retail floor area within this scheme is actually lower than there is at present. So in planning terms, it would be unreasonable to ask for monies when actually, theoretically, there's less retail space. So that's why it's not been asked. But equally, bringing the building back into use and doing it up is considered to be a significant enhancement in its own right, I think. So that's more than reasonable. Affordable housing is required. However, as you'll see in the report, something called the vacant building credits comes into play. I've tried, Councillor Bicknell suggested I try and explain this. I'll try and explain it as best I can. It's not that complex, really. But essentially, the NPPF, to encourage the reuse of brownfield sites and the reuse of buildings, which are usually harder and more expensive to deal with because you have things like land contamination, etc., to deal with additional cost rather than building on a greenfield site. To try and promote that, developers can basically offset some of that development cost through calculating the vacant building credits to reduce the proportion of affordable housing that they need to provide. So the calculation is there. So essentially it's the difference between the proposed and existing floor areas divided by the existing floor area times the policy requirement, and that gives you the required affordable housing percentage. So in this instance, the total proposed is 2,081 square metres. The existing building is 1,807, so we've got a difference of 274. So 274 divided by the 2,081 gives us 0.13 times the policy requirement of 35% gives us 4.6% affordable housing, which for 18 units equates to 0.83 of a unit, or rounded up to 1 unit. So, and that's mainly because essentially the building is being reused. There's very little additional floor space being created, hence why the affordable requirement is much less. Ideally, 1 unit would be in the building, but there is sort of operational difficulties potentially with that. The applicant would prefer to provide an off-site payment. Exactly what that is yet still needs to be negotiated and discussed, but they're happy to provide it together with the other contributions required. So to conclude, we're in a highly sustainable site, town centre use, where a mix of uses is encouraged. So it's bringing a long empty building back into use would be a significant enhancement in terms of the town centre, both visually, physically, in terms of the character there. No unacceptable amenity issues, say the parking, zero parking is acceptable. There's Mitchell Road car park nearby, across the street, where long-term parking permits can be bought if people need them. And in terms of all other policy matters, it meets those requirements. So the recommendation is to approve, subject to completion of a Section 106 or upfront payment towards those planning obligations, as well as securing the monies towards the new forest recreational mitigation scheme, which we discussed earlier. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Gary. Any questions? Councillor Tyson-Payne.
So I've got two. On that slide with your calculation, I think you've got an error in it. So I think it should be times 4.6, not 44.6. Yeah? But otherwise the maths works. The other question is, who's the landlord, or are we selling these units?
It's a private
It's a private.
private
okay.
business. I'm not sure whether they're intending to sell the units on or to rent them, but from in terms of the planning application, it doesn't really make any difference.
Okay, so the reason I wanted to know that was about the commercial units. Are they also the landlord for the commercial units as well? Okay, thanks. Sorry, I've probably missed that somewhere.
Okay, no more questions. Could I have a proposer, please? Councillor Bicknell, and a seconder, Cllr Irish. Any debate? Cllr Irish.
Yes, Chair. Well, I mean, we've seen a lot of changes here on this site, haven't we? I remember the old Regal Cinema. It was a lovely place, and the wonderful organ coming up and down in there. It's really good, and it's been restaurants and things. But yes, it's been very sad over the last few years. It's got very dilapidated, and it's not a very good thing for people coming into Eastleigh to see. So I'm very, very pleased to see this. I think it's a very good solution to the problem there. It's it ticks all the boxes for me, and I very much support it. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Tyson-Payne.
I suppose this should have been a question, really, Gary. I am concerned about the light in Regal Walk. Yes, I'd like to see that we put some low-level lighting, maybe some lighting in the paving area to light it up. Not downlight, because there'll be residents there, but it's a horrible place to walk now, and much as it will have nicer sides to it, it would still feel quite claustrophobic, I think is the word, and a little bit scary. So I'd like to see some light.
I don't disagree. Unfortunately, Regal Walk is outside the demise of the applicant. It's adopted highway land. It's highway land. So, yes, it could certainly add additional lighting in there, uplights and so on, potentially, but that would be something that we'd have to discuss with Hampshire Highways. What I will do as part of the planning application, though, because there may be scope to fix lights to the building itself, so that we can improve the lighting through there in the evenings.
Sorry, Gary, is the lights on the side there, are they not already highway bulkheads on the side?
Don't know.
Right, okay. I thought they were.
So, yeah, this is one of the eyesores in Eastleigh, and I think to actually not have to demolish an old building is absolutely fantastic after criticism of the post office, etc. And actually, it looks so good compared to what it is now. It's an absolute eyesore, but they've done such a good job making it look good. And to also get 4 new commercial units in there will hopefully, that means that there'll be nice units and they'll find someone to go in there. So it'll be 4 more shops into Eastleigh Town Centre to bring more people in. I think is absolutely fabulous. And like we said, we've always looked to bring people in to live above. And I think having the mixture of the shops and the flats and the look of it, it will be amazing. So I'm very, very happy to support this. Councillor Bicknell.
Yes, thank you, Chair. No, totally agree with everything you said. This is the essence of town centre regeneration. At the end of the day, I hope that the developers do actually get on with this and bring it to fruition. I mean, I've obviously got 3 years, so they might not start knocking it down tomorrow, or knocking holes in it tomorrow. But this is the essence of town centre generation, and this, along with the post office development, will certainly start changing Eastleigh Town Centre. It will also hopefully be a catalyst for further investment in the future, whether it be from a private developer or from Eastleigh Borough Council. You actually need both, and that to actually revitalise the town centre. It is a really good development. I mean, the building, the volume of the building and the solidness of the building is what enables it to actually be reused rather than have to be demolished. Unfortunately, with the post office, it didn't have that structural integrity because it didn't have the volume and it didn't have the thickness of the walls. It won't always be the case, but this is what we should be encouraging. And as Councillor Bourne said, people living above shops is the perfect scenario. It brings people into the town centre, they use the facilities, it provides housing, windfill sites, and it actually supports the shops. So I really welcome this scheme and hope that other such schemes come forward in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so we'll move to the vote then. All those in favour? Excellent. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to the financial report from Guy.
Thank you, Chair. As usual, the report is hopefully self-explanatory, but if you do have any questions, do ask.
Any questions? Can I have a proposer, Councillor Bicknell, and a seconder, Cllr Irish? Any debate? Sorry, was that a hand? No, I didn't want to miss you. Thank you. So all those in favour? Thank you, councillors. We're now on to parking fees and charges. I'd like to ask Guy to introduce the report.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Again, I'll take it that you've had a chance to read this one, and if any clarification, just let me know.
Any questions? Can I have a proposer? Councillor Bicknell, and a seconder, Cllr Irish. Thank you. Any debate? Councillor Bicknell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, again, this is a good thing. It goes back to what we've just been saying about regenerating the town centre at the end of the day, reducing parking, whether it be contract, whether it be public. It's all about trying to bring people back into the town centre. So I'm really pleased to see this report, fully support it. And that's all there is to say. Thank you.
Okay, all those in favour? Thank you, councillors. Now ask you to note the planning appeals. Noted. Excellent. So now we have to go into exempt business, but there's actually no members of the public here. So can we just vote to say we'll go into exempt business? Thank you.